Thanks very much, Ceann Corla, and I'm not going to repeat the points Minister made so well by my colleague. I'm really just going to use the time to deal with one example. We're dealing with the revised estimates for your department, and I sincerely hope that you have enough money in the kitty to deal with a root and branch review of the pension governance in this country, because we are on the cusp of a serious problem in that regard. And I want to use the example of the CRC situation, not in and of itself, but as an example of what is likely to happen to the remaining defined benefit schemes in this country, and the huge problem that's going to end up, sadly, on your doorstep. Ireland's pension industry is made up of 150,000 schemes with over 730,000 active members, holding more than 80 billion in investment assets and over 226,000 individual PRSA contracts with over 4.6 billion in investment assets. Absolutely huge, and totally, I would say, not transparent and not accountable. Now, I want to use the example of the CRC, which again is being hit by controversy, not for the first time, and not for the first time in terms of pensions. You know that in 2014, the departure of the former CEO, Paul Kiley, cost the CRC $750,000 in pension payments. And of course, this was attempted to be covered up and led to the resignation of that board. Now we have another pension scandal at the heart of the CRC under a new board and new management, and the staff at that have been treated abysmally. And the reason why it's important is if this is not intervened in by your department, who are responsible for governance, I have no doubt whatsoever it will be replicated by other defined benefit schemes. Now, in 2013, the interim administrator wrote that he was confident that with the appointment in 2014 of a competency-based board and a CEO through open competition, the CRC can move forward to the next phase of what has been a largely successful organisation. This hasn't happened. The CRC is at an all-time low. The pension fund was unilaterally closed. 2 members are within weeks of retirement, one with 30+ years service, one with 44 years service and no pension and zero consultation. Now, what I'd like to know is how, in an area where we're supposed to have governance here, could that happen and no new pension plan be put in place? Is our governance so poor that that can be allowed to happen? I find it actually quite astounding, because I think it does need your intervention, Minister, to say, freeze this scheme now. Don't allow them to go ahead with that decision and have a serious investigation into what's gone on, because it's not just the board who unilaterally made the decision. We have to look at the role of some of its advisors. The same company, Mercer, provided the administration, actuarial and consultancy to the CRC plan, and the trustee of that plan, the Irish Pension Trust, is owned by Mercer. Not only that, even more astounding, the CRC board decided to hire, late last year, another Mercer person to give them a separate advice to the previous Mercer fellow who was in there already given the CRC pension scheme advice. What's more worrying than that is in 2014, the administrator appointed after the board resigned made the point that they were obligated to obtain advice from an independent source that should be relied upon.
You may well be going beyond the terms of the estimates that are before us today.
Well, the point...
I would caution.
Yeah, and I'm trying to...
It's not relevant.
Well, it's very relevant, Cathaoirleach, from the point of view of that the obligations of this scheme and the pensioners in it may end up, one, on the Minister's doorsteps as pensioners, but two, it's very much on his doorstep in terms of he is the person responsible for governance in these areas, and governance has been severely found wanting in this scheme, because a scheme where it was stated that the funding proposals were on track in December 2014, when slightly slightly off track in 2015, but only to the tune of a couple of 100,000, and yet 3 months later that scheme was unilaterally shut down without consultation. Now that is a severe problem. If that is not challenged in this instance, it will be replicated by others. Because what's the impact of that? Well, it means at the moment, for every date since then, the employer, in this instance the CRC, is saving substantial amounts of money at the expense of pensioners. Those people who have a lawful right, in my opinion, to access alternative viewpoints as to how that funding deficit could be met, their interest has not been met. No other proposals have been put in place. And I know from your previous brief, Minister, that you take your responsibility and your stewardship of departments very seriously. And I can honestly say to you, this is one that deserves your further scrutiny, because there are organisations giving advice on our pension schemes that are appearing and popping up on all sides of the balance sheet, as it were, giving advice to both sides, and it is pensioners who are losing out in that situation. Why is there such a clamour and such a rush to shut this scheme down? There is documentation which says that that was being done, and deliberately done, to deny consultation to the employees there, which, as you know, is completely against pension authority rules. So I appreciate what you're saying, Ceann Comhairle, and I am trying to be respectful in dealing with the topic that's on hand. But according to the Pensions Authority, pension fund trustees are supposed to be looking after the savings on behalf of hundreds of thousands of people. Their obligations are not just to act with minimal compliance with the law, but to be active in the best interests of those whose retirement savings they are managing. That obligation cannot be answered in relation to the CRC, and when you know the scale of the organisations involved in this, I would certainly urge that we would dig deeper, because if we don't do that, given our ageing population and given the demands on the Exchequer and on your department, they will be knocking on your door. But not only that, it's absolutely reprehensible that people who've paid into a scheme all their working life, 44 years in the case of one person who's retiring in a couple of weeks' time, would be told there's nothing for you there, that scheme's going to be wound up. We do have a system of governance here, it's in your department, you have a budget here. I hope you're going to up that scrutiny, because you need it, because there's an absolute avalanche coming down the hill on this issue.
Thank you very much, Deputy Dale.